Welcome back to Imagine If. I'm your host as always, The Butler. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This segment of Imagine If is called Real versus Fake Scary Stories. I will be telling you a short, scary or paranormal story in this episode. It will be up to you, the viewer, to determine if this story is based off real facts or if I made up the story with my creative imagination. But I urge you, tread carefully, because in order to determine real versus fake, you must be willing to accept that we live in a world in which things happen. The unexplainable and the unsolved does exist in our world. Are you ready to play? The camping trip. My name is Danny. Me and my wife Marissa went camping back in 2010. And now it's time that we share our creepy, scary story. We made a pact a couple years ago to never tell anyone besides our immediate family. But we're going to share it with you today. We grew up in Chicago, and we have never really experienced the nature side of life. But we decided to go camping as an adventure, if you will, that both of us have never came remotely close to doing. We have both always believed in the paranormal life and had a creepy attraction towards the paranormal and unexplained since we met. It was June 18th, 2010. We decided to go camping on the outskirts of the Smoky Mountains. We downloaded an app called Randonautica. As far as we knew, Randonautica was just an app that anyone could download. After you downloaded the app, we were supposed to manifest something. According to what my coworkers were saying, you could manifest anything: happy, sad, money, wealth, relation. We thought it would be a pretty cool idea if we manifested something evil. We had never heard any actual feedback from the app, but we were pretty excited to try it. So we left pretty early on that morning of the 18th. We packed our bags along with food, water, and every other major essential. The plan was to hike northwest for 3 hours. We were both in pretty good shape, and we worked out regularly. So we parked our car at a local pay parking lot before heading into the woods. It was a pretty hot day. Had to be no less than 100 degrees with the heat index. We did have to stop a few times, but our main goal was to make it to the lake before it got dark. According to the map we were following, there was a hidden lake that we planned to set up camp near. We reached the lake about an hour before sundown. Our goal was to sit back, relax, and enjoy ourselves from our current reality. We brought a few beers along with some pot to smoke. It was a perfect night. It was a nice cool breeze, and the moonlight was shining off the lake perfectly. After a couple beers and a half a joint, we decided to open up the app and test things out. After creating our profile and filling out a few basic pieces of information, it was time to manifest something. We simply manifested that we wanted to experience something evil. So we did that. And the app sent us to a location that was inside of the woods, about a half a mile away from our campsite. We were extremely hesitant about going, given it was nighttime, but we did have flashlights and the moonlight. So we decided to go anyway. It took us maybe 25 minutes or so to reach the location. Once we got to the location, we noticed that we both had this overwhelming feeling of creepiness. Once we got to the location, our instincts were right. There was a creepy old car that had been abandoned in the middle of the woods, which is almost impossible given all the trees that had grown around the car. There was no possible way, in my mind at least, that the car could have made it in the middle of the woods. This spooky car was pretty beat down, and it looked like it had been there for 40 or 50 years or so. I could not make out the make and model of the car. The doors and the hood were missing. Windows had been burst out, and it seemed the car was set on fire at some point. As we were checking out the car, we could hear something that sounded to be like a baby crying. The sound was clearly coming from the woods, but we could not see anything. This alone freaked us out. This went on for a solid minute and a half, possibly 2 minutes. We started walking towards the crying baby voice that we were hearing. But the closer we got, the voice kind of just faded away. We decided that was freaky enough. I was creeped out, she was creeped out, and we decided to head back to the camp. Heading back to the camp meant that we had to pass the old car. So, as we were passing the car on the way back to the campsite, there was pink blankets surrounding the vehicle. These pink blankets looked to be brand new, and they were definitely not there a couple of minutes ago. We knew then and there that we had tapped in or unlocked something beyond our comprehension. We continued to head back towards the campsite, and that's when we started to notice that the moonlight that was shining so brightly off the lake was no longer shining, and we could hear footsteps all around us. It's possible that it was animals that we were hearing, but it sounded more like calculated human footsteps. Our flashlights were working perfectly fine, but every time we flashed a light on where we heard a sound, there was nothing there. Then things took a sinister turn. My wife, she was walking in front of me, and out of nowhere, her body flew 25 feet or so to the right, slamming into a tree. It knocked her completely unconscious. I obviously ran over there and started to tend to her. And as I was trying to wake her up, something scratched me right across the back of my neck. And please, make no confusion about this. This was no animal. We would have seen it. There were 3 deep scratches along the back of my neck, which I had absolutely no explanation for. It was unexplainable. I picked up my wife, and thankfully, she was able to walk. No cuts, just a really big bruise on the back of her head. When we got back to the campsite, we noticed that the moonlight was back shining. After all that had just went on, everything seemed calm. Then I looked out on the lake, and we both saw a very tall shadow figure, looked like the shadow figure of a man, walking slowly across the lake as if the lake was frozen, casually walking and not paying us any attention, even though we had a fire burning. It's like we weren't even there. We had no reception, so there was absolutely no point of us trying to call the police or any type of emergency services. The shadow figure eventually kind of just disappeared or blended in with the moonlight. We obviously decided that we would leave as soon as daylight broke. My wife had worked a double the day before, so she was extremely tired. She fell asleep while I pretty much stayed up all night, freaked out, and it was my job to protect us from whatever we could. Around 4 a.m. or so, I heard footsteps outside of our tent, and I was very hesitant to wake my wife up, but I wanted to let her rest. So I came out of the tent, and I literally see footsteps being made in the sand, as if someone was walking there. And this is what truly creeped me out. There's clearly no one there, but there were footprints being made in the sand. And then about 30 feet away or so, I saw a young girl. She looked to be maybe 12 or 13 years old, and she was holding a pink blanket. She was all by herself. She had black lipstick on and an upside down cross on her forehead. I called out and asked her, does she need help? I told her to come by me and my wife. I asked her, does she know where her parents were? I asked these few questions, but she just put her head down and started to cry very softly. I started to walk towards her, but she kept her head down, shaking her head. Then she began to shake her head pretty aggressively. At some point, her eyes went blank, just showing the whites of her eyes. She then gave me a creepy smile before running into the lake. I ran in right after her. I could not have been more than 10 feet behind her. Strangely enough, I could not find her at all. I was in the lake for at least 10 solid minutes. Not a trace of her, not even her pink blanket she was holding. By this time, it was sunrise. As we started to hike back towards our car, I noticed on my wife that she had also been scratched on the back of her neck, with 3 identical lines like mine. Even more unexplainable, that the abandoned car that we saw last night, the one that was surrounded by pink blankets, was no longer there. It was just the pink blankets, except for one of the pink blankets had a family photo on it. It was what appeared to be a middle-aged couple with a young girl. The young girl immediately caught my attention. The young girl in the photo was the same young girl that ran into the lake. Hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight. How do you think you scored today's show? Before I give you guys the answer to tonight's show, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you got any enjoyment out of today's show. So do you think this story was true? Or was it completely made up? If you thought that this story was true, you're right. This actually happened. Thank you so much for watching Real versus Fake Scary Stories. I'll see you guys soon.